Hey everyone, welcome back to Bipolar Brought Balance. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my wedding and what I did in planning it and leading up to it to make sure my mental health stayed balanced throughout the process. For those of you who are new here, my name's Emily. In 2018, I had a manic episode and was hospitalized. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and went through about 3 months of treatment before returning back to work and trying to figure out my new life with this bipolar disorder diagnosis. It's now been over 7 years since I was hospitalized. I've been very fortunate to be relatively balanced that entire time, but something I've learned throughout the process is that happy events can create just as much of an increase in my mood or energy, but also risk to hypomania as maybe a sad or stressful event. And I think for some people that's surprising. We might think of mental health episodes coming when things are going wrong. Maybe you lose your job or something happens to a family member. Those are all the kinds of typical things we might think of to cause a mental health episode. But when good things are happening, like moving, for example, or an exciting life event, that for someone with bipolar disorder can ramp you up or start to put your brain in that overdrive mode that can be just as problematic and end up in the same, hypomanic or manic state as a negative life event. So I first feel like I learned and discovered this 2 years ago when I got engaged. It was obviously a very exciting time. My partner and I had been together for 7 years, so we got engaged on our 7-year anniversary. And, it was 24 hours of reaching out and telling friends and family, being on phone calls and FaceTimes and texting. And for anyone, that just kind of like gets your dopamine going, and celebrating, going and seeing friends after we found out or told people. And so because I track my sleep so closely with my Aura Ring, I noticed not only the night we got engaged, but in those nights following, my sleep quality wasn't that great. And it was mainly because late at night, I wasn't winding down. I was still texting or looking at pictures or talking to people. And that was causing my sleep quality to decline because even if I could sleep in the morning, my body not getting into that deep sleep early enough was what was causing the sleep quality to be decreased. So lucky for me, I kind of have a series of things that I do when that starts to happen. And the first is starting to do more med management. So one of my medications that I take for bipolar disorder makes me sleep. And so I have a set amount that I take every day. And if I feel like I need more help sleeping, I can take additional like 25 or 50 milligrams. Or if I wake up in the middle of the night and I don't feel like I can fall back asleep because maybe my mind is racing, I can take a little extra milligrams and that'll help me get back into a couple of hours of deeper sleep. So I did that in those days. And then I also, made an appointment with my treatment team to tell them what was going on. And nothing was problematic. I mean, even in those days, I was getting maybe, 7 hours, or I was able to get that length, but I wasn't getting my deep, like REM sleep. And so that was the first life lesson to me that your body doesn't just go into these phases for negative things. It can be positive things too. So fast forward, we decided to have a 2-year engagement and get married on our 9-year anniversary. And as someone who had been an event planner for my job, I kind of knew that if I planned a huge event with a lot of details and decisions that needed to be made, that would become very stressful for me and like emotionally taxing. And I tell people when I used to plan events for my job, so at Yelp pre-pandemic, I would coordinate all these business owner events. So we'd work with local restaurants or other businesses that had space, and we would host events, networking or workshops. And so in that process, I would often tell the business owner that would host us, here's my budget. You decide what you want to serve, or here's our guest quantity, how much we need to set aside for beverage. And I would make the joke like, you pick everything. It's not my wedding, so I don't care. Like, you can serve whatever you want. And in that environment, it worked really well because the business owner got to have some autonomy and they got to serve what they wanted, which was good for them, like opening their doors for an event. But it also really spoke to how I felt. Like, there was so many other details I needed to worry about: name tags, flow of people for check-in. I didn't want to waste time and energy hand picking a menu when I know that the owner or chef can do that way better than me. So, fast forward to wedding. I do have to preface this by saying I'm not the kind of person who grew up like dreaming of what my wedding would look like. I didn't have like all these visions in my mind of my wedding until I felt like I was going to marry Tony. Like, then I started kind of picturing our wedding. So I guess I would say I'm not the kind of person that had all these preconceived visions when I was younger of what I wanted, which might make this decision-making process that I went on easier. I don't know. But regardless, another thing that's unique is I'm in my 30s. So when we got engaged, I think I was 34. I had just turned 34. And then when we got married, I just turned 36. And I always tell people, if I had gotten married in my 20s, I'm sure so many things would have been different, including what the event looked like, because of all the people that would be giving opinions and influence. And in your mid-30s, you don't take some of that as much. You do more of what you want to do, or at least I do more of what I want to do. I feel like I have more autonomy and like voice to say if I want to do something, especially for my wedding, you know? So I come from a big family. Each of my parents are one of 6 siblings. So I have 5 aunts and uncles on one side and 5 on the other, and they're all married. And every set of aunts and uncles on both sides, except one on each side, has kids, either 2 or 3. So just picture that, like, the multiplication is huge. And now my cousins were all very close in age on both sides. Most of them are married or partnered up, so that doubles the amount of people again. So a typical like Thanksgiving for us or Christmas is over 30 people, and that's like not with everyone there sometimes. So it's a lot of people. And I just knew if we had the type of wedding that my extended family was included in, it would have to be over 100 people minimum. Like, there was no way it was going to get anywhere under 150 probably. And so I knew from a financial standpoint, I didn't want that big of a wedding. But I also knew that a large wedding like that, you either hire an event planner to kind of do all of that stuff for you, or you do it. And I have the skill set to be able to do it. But for me, I know myself enough to know making all of those decisions is emotionally draining. And so I wanted to do it in a way that wasn't stressful. The other thing I'll say about the financial piece, just because I want people to talk about this more, is like, I'm not saying that if you spend a lot of money on your wedding, I don't get it. Like, I do understand it. If you get true joy out of some of those things that are a part of a traditional wedding, like having musicians or a DJ and dancing for a couple hours, like if you want to do those traditional things, I do not throw any shade whatsoever. Like, I have a lot of friends who did big weddings and they were so fun, amazing. But I just know myself enough to know if I was spending that much money on a day, that would also emotionally tax me. Like, it would be something that I would think about. And I also think that's attached to being older. Like, Tony and I bought our house and did some reno before we moved in about 4 years ago. So the way I think of money is like, oh my gosh, I could spend that to do like a renovation or an upgrade. Like, I just think of it so differently. And if I was younger, I think I might think of it a lot differently. So much of my journey that I talk about is like steeped in privilege. And I feel like that's an important thing to always call out too. Like, I have a brother, and so he got married before me, and my parents at that time basically said, we had money saved for each of you for your weddings. Emily, do you want yours now to use for all of your house stuff? And that's like first of all, it was a privilege in my whole homeownership process, and I'll talk about that in the future. But because of that notion of like, I took this lump of money a couple years ago and put it into our house, I had known before we were even engaged that I didn't want a big wedding. So fast forward, we got engaged. We knew we wanted like a longer engagement. We weren't in a rush to have our wedding, mainly because we don't want to have kids. So like, I didn't really see the need to rush. We have the life that we want and all the things that we want. And so the wedding was kind of like a celebration, a party in my mind. And I knew that if we planned it too quickly, that would also stress me out. So these are all the little tiny things I was considering as we were thinking about what we were going to do. And I'll also say, like, we got engaged on our 7-year anniversary. I don't even think we started talking about what the wedding was going to look like or the date until 6 months later, probably. And so many people asked me, like, do you have a date? What are you going to do? I mean, I had people asking me a day or two after we got engaged, do you have a date? And I just want to say, if you're newly engaged or you want to be engaged or whatever, that's a life stage that you want to go through, don't let anyone rush you into thinking you should already have that figured out. Like, you're allowed to enjoy being engaged first and then figure out what you want to do. So yes, it was about 6 months after we kind of started talking, like, what's our vision? We decided no extended family. And then when I knew it was going to be that size, like maybe about 40 people, so our parents and our closest friends, then I immediately was thinking, oh, a restaurant would be perfect because they're going to take care of like 80% of the decisions, right? I don't have to find furniture. I don't have to do linens. Like, they already have a menu. I'm just going to pare it down. I just envisioned a restaurant as the host or venue, making my life so much easier in so many ways. And so then we had to think about what restaurant we wanted. And Tony is friends with the owner of Moe's, a place for steaks here in Milwaukee. Not the Irish pub, same owners, but we did not get married in an Irish pub. We got married in a steak restaurant. And yeah, we love going there to celebrate stuff. We love going out for steak as like a celebratory thing. And so getting to know the servers there, really loving it there, we thought, okay, this is great. They also do events. They have like a banquet room upstairs where we could have our ceremony. So we locked that in. And honestly, after we locked in the date and the venue, I didn't have to do anything for like many, many months, which was really nice. We knew how it was going to work at the restaurant, like paring down the menu, the types of options we'd have. But I didn't have to like start planning all these details or choosing anything. And then the other big thing that was kind of necessary or I felt important for the wedding was the floral, like what's going to be on the table, what's going to be around us during the ceremony to add that visual feel. And we're so lucky. We have an amazing friend here in Milwaukee, Michael. She owns 41 Floral. If you've not heard of them, maybe you've been living under a rock because they are wildly popular and they do amazing, beautiful work. The beauty of knowing your florist is I didn't even have to make any decisions with that. I told Michael any color palette except just pale, like light colors. And I wanted it to have attitude, which basically all of her arrangements and flowers have attitude. And so, yeah, I told her the date and we waited until January. So I just got married January 26th, 2026. So in January, after the holidays and everything had died down, I circled back with the restaurant event planner, my friend Michael. Like, I locked in those details, but I truly left it to a minimal number of things that we need to coordinate. We did our event in the middle of the day, which was awesome because I wanted to not have my wedding end at midnight. And it was nice because it saved us some money, right? Like, being at a restaurant and renting it out in the middle of the day when they're not normally open is way cheaper than at night. And that wasn't even intentional. It just kind of aligned with wanting to get married on our anniversary and some other things that we prioritized. But I kind of got joy out of feeling like we were saving or like choosing things mindfully that weren't going to financially stress us out. So we did our daytime thing there. And then at night, for a couple of hours, we rented a little brewery, and I just kind of let that decision be made by some advice from a friend. I didn't even go look at it in advance because in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we're going to have some pizza. We are friends with the owner of Brick 3 here in Milwaukee, which is amazing pizza. They were so gracious to give us pizza for our after party and beer. I mean, the bar was going to be open. So what more do people need? I didn't want to overcomplicate it with what's it going to look like in there? And, things that maybe I would have cared about in the past, but I knew by saving that brain space for myself or that energy, I could make other decisions. And so it ended up being an amazing day. Everything went right to time, which I think is like the most important thing. And it was so beautiful. It was such a fun celebration. We got to spend so much time with everyone who came because it was a smaller group. So we got to talk to everyone and look at one table and see everyone, which was, kind of what I envisioned once we started planning what the day was going to look like. So yeah, I feel like in some ways in the planning phase, people might have thought, or even I thought, like, okay, I'm consciously cutting this corner or consciously not doing this because I want to save that energy or store that energy. And when the day came, I was so glad at all of those decisions that I didn't go like over the top, above and beyond. And that's in a time capacity too. Like one last example I'll give for this is music, right? So like how everything looks and what the sound is kind of the most important thing. And so I envisioned putting together music for when people were arriving for the ceremony, obviously what we're going to walk down to, what we walk out to. And then I was going to make playlists for happy hour and while we're eating our big lunch and at the brewery later. And I had started like adding things to a Spotify playlist, but I was planning in the week leading up, Tony and I taking some time and adding a bunch of songs together. Well, then I emailed the brewery to say like, hey, do we play our own music or what's the deal? And they said, we can certainly work with you, but since you're on this main floor, we normally just run the regular music. And as soon as they said that, I was like, perfect. You guys play whatever you want to play. Because I knew I didn't care so much about what was being played. I just knew I wanted there to be something in the background. You don't want it to be quiet at an event, even if it's a lot of people. And so once I got that little like permission slip from the brewery to not make a custom playlist, I asked the event coordinator at the restaurant, what do you guys normally play? And they just played some music. So we picked the songs that we walked down to, that we walked out to. But beyond that, I kind of let the music thing go. And I don't know good, bad, or indifferent how it went because it didn't matter, right? Like, I'm glad it was there in the background, but I'm also glad I didn't spend 3+ hours making a playlist that I didn't really ever hear almost. So if you're in the planning phase, if you're thinking about it and you're worried about decision making, money, all of that, you can do it however you want. You can get married, just you and your partner. You can have a party in the park. You can have a barbecue. You can have a huge wedding. But do what you want to do and try to minimize the stress, whatever that looks like for you, because you want to be able to enjoy it, And I did enjoy it, but it really went fast, even for me. I was like, people say that, but all of a sudden the day was over. So keep that in mind too. Like, how much time, energy, money do you want to spend knowing that it comes and goes so fast? But it was amazingly fun. The last thing I'll say, we decided to hire a photographer, and it was a little hard to find someone to fit what we needed because normally there's these minimums for like big weddings and, 7-hour days. But I found this amazing photographer. Her name's Danny. She's here in Milwaukee. Actually, Michael, the owner of 41 Floral, referred her. And I'm so glad that we paid for a photographer because even though she was only with us a couple hours, we coordinated the specific moments that we thought would be great for pictures. and we just have our first look. We don't even have all the pictures back, just like a couple. And they're amazing. I mean, she just captured the day so beautifully, and we'll have those memories for forever. But we didn't need to spend money in a ton of other, ways that are kind of intangible after the day. So do what suits you and your partner and enjoy, and make sure it doesn't stress you out more than it brings you happiness.